Hey everybody, welcome to InPsightRadio. I am your host, Danielle Egnew, and you are a fly on the wall to everywhere. How is everybody? Woo! I am having a fantastic week. I really am. I had family come to visit, my cousin Misha. It was so much fun. I got to take her all over Montana. It was absolutely outstanding. And today, on the 19th of February, we have a full moon in Virgo sprouting, a full moon in Virgo. So if you've been feeling fussy in home and hearth, or fussy about your life decisions, fussy about just about anything, Virgo moon is really going to emphasize that. And basically, when we have these moon cycles, okay, the moon spends roughly 2.5 days in each sign of the zodiac as it transitions. And with the moon in Virgo, you might have some really nitpicky, organized, emotional needs that come up, things that you just absolutely have to deal with. And with this big full moon, those Virgo energies are just punched up. I mean, today, you're probably going to be feeling a little bit like you need to make everything perfect in your universe. So today you're going to understand what it feels like to be our Virgo friends all day, and probably tomorrow and some shadow period before this February 19th moon. So, you might want to watch the need to be absolutely positively right. Virgos, I love you all. You love to be right. And actually, generally, you're right a lot because you're the most detailed sign in the zodiac. So if you're feeling like you want to argue and be right and you have to be right, just kind of take a chill pill during this great big giant full moon in Virgo tonight. And the wonderful aspects of full moon in Virgo is it does lead us towards efficiency. We want to cut the fluff out during Virgo timeframes because Virgo people, they're just the facts, ma'am, and they are efficient. They're great with a sale. I love you, Virgos. You're always finding amazing, beautiful things at really great discounts. I mean, you guys have a knack. You just have a knack. So be careful also during this Virgo moon, gang, that you don't get too hard on yourself because Virgos, you guys will beat yourself up like nobody's business. You are your own personal Rocky, Virgos. So during this full moon, and again, the full moon period energetically lasts for a couple of days before the moon and a couple of days after the full moon. So just be aware that if you're getting a little overly persnickety with yourself, it's likely the moon. If you're getting into arguments or you're feeling really, really crazed about the home front and you can't seem to get it under control, Virgo full moon, just take some great big deep breaths. It's okay. So this is also a really good time in this Virgo full moon to really analyze what's going on inside of you. It's a good time to really look into your feelings, and just analyze why you feel that way rather than actually going to the depths of feeling them, even though we're in Pisces. So that's going to make it feel a little conflicting. But this is a good time to run all those emotions through the mental filter, the Virgo analytical filter, and go ahead and throw out any of those emotions that really don't have a good practical application during this time, because emotions are fantastic, gang, yet they're like weather patterns. So if we're living on it too much during Virgo moon, we can really feel like we're being bogged down. So that can be really intense. So basically, this is a good time to just try to be gentle on yourself, because it's going to be really easy to be critical of yourself during this moon. It's a good time to really intellectualize rather than feel and go to the Piscean depth of the woes of everything we have. I'm a Pisces, so trust me. I know about the Piscean depth. So Virgo moon, Virgos, you're going to sail through. Everybody else having this Virgo moon, just watch not to get too crazola and too nitpicky with yourself. And this is a good day to rearrange all the dishes in your cabinet for the next week. Take advantage of that Virgo moon. Also, yesterday, February 18th, Chiron left Pisces. And Chiron is this funky asteroid that factors into astrology. And truthfully, I'm not exactly sure how or why it does, yet it seems to affect a lot of emotionality. And so yesterday, I noted that Chiron took off and left Pisces. And basically, it ended a 9-year period of really looking into and examining and rehashing our biggest regrets, our deepest fears, our most deep sorrows, and other wounds that we've been carrying since our birth. We've been doing that for 9 years. Yeah, that's a little heavy, right? So thank you, Chiron, for leaving Pisces on the 18th. So we should be feeling a little levity with the full moon in Virgo. And now we're just rocking and cooking with gas, people. That's awesome. And remember, these aspects do have a shadow period a few days before the actual date and a few days after the actual date. So if you're not listening to this podcast right exactly on February 19th, that's okay. Because, hey, within a couple of days, you're still picking up what this astrology is laying down. So I love to share all of that with you, gang. And I want to talk about something that's been coming up for a lot of people lately, because we don't often talk about it on the podcast. And oftentimes I'm not hearing a whole lot of people talk about it, period, which is going to sound goofy once you actually know what we're talking about today. Yet I want to talk about dreams because, I've been talking about the fact that our ethers are more thin than they've ever been. And we've been experiencing multidimensional effects because of these thin ethers. So as we've been going through this thin ether period, one of the effects of that for us as human beings are really vivid dreams. And my daughter has been having some crazy vivid dreams. And that's kind of a thing in our house. We get up, we talk about our dreams, and I get the opportunity to decode those dreams for her. I mean, is it something that is symbolic, or is it this, is it that? So I have a lot of fun with my child when it comes to dreams. And I've noted a lot of my clients are having some really intense dream cycles. Now, why talking about dreams? I mean, we're not going to sit here and, drag out the dream dictionary and go through every single meaning. Yet, gang, I want to tell you that our spiritual guides, our angels, deceased loved ones, all of these beings come to us in dreams. And they will speak to us in our dreams, because when we're dreaming, not only is our brain matrixing to try to work out, freakouts, things that we've dealt with during the day. I mean, not only can our brain break it down and really try to help us with some of the problems that we're psychologically dealing with when we dream. Yet, when we dream, gang, our brains go into delta waves. That is this really slow brainwave cycle. And the slower the brainwave cycle, the more we can pick up what the universe is laying down. Literally. Because we don't have that high, fast, oscillating, crazy rock and rollin' alpha wave pattern that is actually akin to agitation in brainwaves. When we're in the delta wave pattern, we are literally receiving not only what the brain is manufacturing, but we are also receiving what is being placed out into the universe for us. So it's really important to actually keep a dream journal if you can. And I know a lot of folks who say, God, I try to remember my dreams, Danielle, and I just don't remember them. Well, I'll tell you, we all dream. You may not remember your dreams, yet every single one of us dreams. I mean, our brain is just churning out information in our sleep cycle. And we've all heard of REM, the rapid eye movement section of sleep. And that's when we fall deeply asleep, sleep enough to trigger the REM cycle. And we see this prominently in movies, and you see somebody's eyeball moving but underneath of their eyelid, and we're dreaming now, we're in the REM cycle. When that's going on, not only is the brain working through problems during the day, but the REM cycle is also pulling in spiritual information. Again, we're in that delta wave pattern, and when we're meditating, we're in theta waves. Regular conversation like I'm in with you right now are beta waves. And if I'm really agitated and upset, those are alpha waves. So brainwaves are fascinating. And some of the issues with our dreaming have to do with us processing, again, messages from the ethers. So since our ether sphere is so thin, okay, people are having some really amazing dreams. I have a lot of clients right now who are having incredible predictive dreams. And people calling me up and saying, man, I've never dreamt about tornadoes before, but I have been having nonstop tornado dreams forever. This has been insane. And I'll dream about tornadoes, and, there's psychological ramifications about tornado dreams. Generally, if I dream about tornadoes, I go check the news, and sure enough, there were the same 6 tornadoes that touched down in such and such of a state or whatever. And last night, I was dreaming about horrific tsunami hitting. And I was actually in the wave of the tsunami, so I was getting tossed around with cars and buildings and people, and it was pretty awful. However, I'm sending a lot of love out to our beloved planet Earth because, there's a big tsunami coming somewhere. And this did feel like a tropical region. So I'm just holding those tropical regions, Indonesia and anywhere else that could have a tropical deciduous leaf landscape, in a lot of love. So when we have our dreams, journal about what you're dreaming about. Because generally, the universe is attempting to convey a message to us. And what's cool about dreams is that, yes, you can look up a dream dictionary, and there are psychological meanings to different, a duck is probably just a duck in a dream. However, when you go to determine and decipher your own dreams, look at the whole dream as a whole, because our consciousness speaks to us in allegories. I didn't know if you knew that or not. Angels will communicate allegorically. They communicate in these massive cubes of information. And so when our consciousness is attempting to communicate with us, even our spiritual consciousness, yes, sometimes we'll have a dream and a spirit will show up, and it's Great Aunt Mary, and Great Aunt Mary says, Daniela, you must go and buy the pepperoni at the grocery store. It's gonna make your pizza great. And the next day, my kid comes home and says, gee, I wish we could make pizza. Do we have any pepperoni? Yes. Sometimes, and I actually do have a Great Aunt Mary who occasionally comes and talks to me about food in my dreams. And she's from Italy. So there you go. However, we want to, once in a while, those dreams can be interpreted quite literally. Yet dreams overall are allegorical. And there are some fantastic divination processes that we can exhibit when we decode our dreams. So say you're having a dream about, let me tell you. So my daughter has this dream that there are all these weird animals running around everywhere, but not everybody can see them. And the people that can see them are seeing really crazy albino giraffe and really weird colored dogs, but not everybody can see those animals. So the people that can see them are trying to capture them, and the people that can't see them are really mad and jealous of the people that can see them. So she gets done telling me this dream, and because I do so much angelic translation, and because angels communicate with us so heavily allegorically, and with parables and stories and big picture, and oh my God, I knew what this dream was about. And so I love to do dream interpretation. It's one of my very favorite things to do. It's so flipping cool. So I said to my daughter, I said, honey, this dream's about you and the fact that you can detect many mystical things that other people can't. And the people getting mad that the certain people could find really cool animals and go catch them, you're dealing with the fact that other kids, because my daughter's 14, you're dealing with the fact that other kids get jealous or don't understand the world that you're seeing. They don't understand anything you're going through because you can see those magical animals. And she kind of looked at me and she's like, yeah, I really kind of have been going through this weird thing at school and blah, blah, blah. So when we look at our dreams, they are big picture allegories. And I suppose, you absolutely could break it down. Actually, the albino animals in her dream. Albinos are a rare genetic thing. And those were also a manifestation of her. She felt like an unusual creature that only she could see. So the allegorical nature of our dreams are teaching us the power of the self in the world. So I love doing dreams. I love when clients call with dreams. It's just so cool. So one of the things that I find is so important when we dream journal is if you go ahead and keep a journal, pretty soon you're going to start to see a repeating pattern. Now, the gift of divination, gang, is a spiritual gift. It's a psychic gift, okay? The gift of divination also can be applied to tarot cards or tea leaf reading or runes. These are divining or grabbing a message through an image. And technically, dream interpretation is divination. So this is where it gets a little weird. I don't actually consider myself a divinator. I'll have a harder time looking at a pack of tarot cards and then reading the future off the tarot cards. I mean, I just tap into the angel channel and say, what are we talking about today? However, when it comes to dreams, I rock dreams, and it's likely because I have angels who help me translate them. So I'm not exactly a divinator, but I love dream interpretation. And let me give you an example. I was going through a period of my life while we were living in a particular home in Billings, and where we moved before we moved here to Bozeman. And all of those dreams, every single freaking night, gang, every night in those dreams, I would go to a place where all of the buildings looked exactly the same. They were run down. They were old and ratty. They all needed to be fixed up. There was a lot more damage when you went into the basement. The basements oftentimes had demonic hauntings in them. I mean, it was rough. Now, homes in dreams tend to represent the self. So I'd wake up going, oh my God, do I have a demonic haunting in my psyche? I mean, what's going on here? Yet I found it fascinating that every single time I went to sleep, I woke up in the same exact alternate universe. Like, you can dream and you're at a soda fountain or you're at the beach or whatever. No way. While I was living in this house, the same exact universe, if you want to call it that, was always visited when I was dreaming. I mean, it was really bizarre. It was nuts. So I again thought, God, Danielle, maybe you need to see a therapist. This isn't good. These are ratty, rundown houses. And in these houses, there were weird secret passageways that people didn't know about and secret floors that only I knew was there. And again, I'm applying the psychological ramifications of houses going, oh, Danielle, you are one sick cookie here, girl. You need to see somebody here. Well, as I went along in my dream interpretation process, one of the things that I realized, and I came about this realization fairly quickly, was when we were moving out of our home. Our house that we moved out of in Billings was old. It was 1920s. It had cove ceilings and low ceilings in the basement, and I could never prove it. Yet there was a ghost of a little girl that actually lived in that home and would do things like turn on lights and let the dogs out. And I mean, this little girl had died in that house. I'm positive of it because we got into a conversation about how she fell down the back cellar stairs. So the house had some really weird features to it. And in those weird features, there was a lot of weird, craggy, strange secret passage spaces in the basement. So I was under the impression that maybe that little girl had been interned in the house somewhere because she was very married to the basement and a certain part of the basement. So during my time in this home, even though it was a great house, gang. It was so cool. The old paint 1920s windows and lath and plaster walls. I mean, it was a really cool place. So when we moved out, we started cleaning the home and noticed that the house was actually falling apart. I mean, it was literally falling apart. I swear to God, the love in that home kept it together. That's what kept that house together. But it was falling apart. And I was completely amazed when we were moving out by the wood disintegrating around the window panes. When I went to clean the basement out, I mean, this is stuff you just don't notice while you're living there, but this house was literally just rotting out from underneath of us. And it startled me because what I realized was that the whole time I'd been living there, and I'd had some weird allergy problems and all kinds of other things in that house, although I loved the house, I realized that no, I was not having any weird psychological decrepit issues. I was literally being affected by the spirit of my environment while in the delta wave pattern in my brain, and I was literally picking up how haunted and decrepit that flipping house was. And that house also had something else in it, a really dark presence that didn't stay there all the time, yet I'm pretty sure that that's what kept the little girl there. And the little girl and I had a really big talk about not letting that dark thing keep her there because, she thought it was posing as somebody that she knew. So I had to try to convince her that, hey, guess what? This is a dark, evil, yucky thing that's eating your light and you need to get the heck out of here, kid. So when we were moving, that little girl was really sad. She was really sad that we were taken off and I told her, I crossed her over. I said, you got to go find your grandma. She's in the light, blah, blah, blah. So the little girl had crossed over and my wife and I were sleeping in our bedroom, which there was nothing left there except for the bed because everything else had been packed up and the basement was all packed up. And in the middle of the night, this dark, creepy thing that used to come through the house maybe 3 times a year, it would never come in the bedroom because the resonation in the bedroom was too high. Yet this thing was very dark and it walked right up to our bedroom door and grabbed the door handle. And our door handles, gang, they were 5-panel 1920s doors, okay, with the glass, super cool glass handles, right? This thing goes up, this angry thing, because I'd crossed this little girl over, and it grabbed the doorknob and it shook it. Like imagine somebody, kind of rattling a doorknob in a horror movie. They do it really slowly. Well, imagine it rattling the whole door and the whole doorknob is just going, and then the door goes boom. And Rebecca and I sat straight up in bed going, what in God's green hell was that? But we both knew because we knew that the little girl was in the house and we knew that that dark thing was there and it was mad because the little girl went on. So going back to dream cycles, okay, in all of these houses that I dreamt about, there was a secret crag in the house where some dark demonic thing lived. And I'm not saying I had a demon in my house, yet this thing would pass through whatever the real dark thing was. So my dreamscape in those delta waves was trying to warn me the whole time going, girl, I know you love your house. Yet this thing is old, it's rotting, it's falling apart, and it's got some weird crevices and some weird mojo going on here, and you need to know about it. So I'm just going to keep inserting that in your dreams, and then, of course, I'd wake up and not draw a parallel to my cute little perfectly decorated 1920s house, because, geez, sometimes we must be hit over the head over and over again. So get this. So then I move, right? We move into this beautiful new place, that's only 15 years old up in Bozeman, and I don't have one haunted house dream. I don't have one weird dream where I'm in that weird scape with all the weird stuff. Not one dream like that. Because I literally moved out of the ether where the spirit life was trying to warn me, hey, the house you're living in is a lot heavier than you think it is. And we didn't notice it as much because, gosh, you live there, you put a bunch of love in the house, whatnot. So your dreams are also trying to inform you about your current surroundings. And that's why I told that story. because I found it uncanny. I freaked Rebecca out telling her stories night after night. Oh my God, I'm not dreaming about gross, ugly houses anymore. I'm not going to this ghost town of a place when I dream. It was phenomenal. And so when we dream, we open up those delta waves to also receive messages from a spirit life. We can dream about people, former people, our deceased relatives come to talk to us in dreams. Let me give you an example. One of the most poignant examples I ever had of that was my grandma and I were really close. My grandma Pinky and I, she had red hair and she didn't want anybody to call her Red because it freaked her out. So my grandpa called her Pink. Hey, Pink. Hey, Pinky. So my grandma Pinky, she was like my mom, Capricorn, January 6th, just a cool lady. And she did a lot of raising me when my mom was going back to school after my folks got divorced. So here we were, I'm going through this whole fascinating renaissance with my grandma as a kid. Well, my grandma dies when I'm probably about 24, 25 years old. And I was so close to my grandma that was just, that the first really big death that you have, and it teaches you about mortality, and it just feels like your guts are ripping out, and it was just terrible. So I'm flying back from Seattle to go see my grandma, her casket and the funeral and whatever. She was back in Montana. So I figured that I'd hear from my gram, that I would have dreams with my grandma coming visiting me. My grandma did not come visit me in a dream until 24 years later. She just was MIA. She was nowhere to be found. And I was so distraught about that for the longest time until I learned through these angels that a lot of times our deceased loved ones won't come visit us in dreams until we can actually handle the emotionality of talking with them. They just won't, because we can wake up and be completely uncentered and sobbing and destroyed if we're not in a place to be able to emotionally receive that spirit. I mean, think about it. That's one of the things I find fascinating, gang, about the spirit life and about the way that the world works spiritually, is that Mother, Father, God, or however you want to look at the vast consciousness of being, there are rules laid down in this consciousness. And one of the cardinal rules is don't freak out the people left behind. Because we as people, we have to grieve. We have to go through closure. There are certain points of our human psyche that require a grief period. And, I'm going to do a radio show sometime on what heartbreak actually is. It's actually a physiological as well as a spiritual condition where our ties to the person who we are close to, we can still feel them in the ether sphere, but we can't feel them physically. So it creates this whole feedback through the heart chakra. I mean, it's massive. We go through withdrawals with brain chemistry. It's a huge thing. So when our family members who have died, whose body has died, we never die, whose body has died, when they come back to hang with us and to talk with us in our dreams, they're not going to come back until we can receive them in a way that will not absolutely just destroy us and throw us over the edge and reignite our raw grief. So I'll have clients say, geez, I'm just so freaked out that my mom hasn't come to visit me yet. And I'll say to them, well, honey, it's because you are freaked out that she hasn't come to visit you, that she's not visiting because she can't yet. It's against the rules to go in with guns blazing and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to visit you even though you're not ready for it yet. So going back to my grandma, we were so close that even though I talk to angels and spirits every day for a living, and off-worlders and elementals, even though I am actively talking to these beings, I couldn't find my own grandma. So 24 years later, my grandma shows up in a dream, and it's right before something really traumatic was going to happen in my life. And I had dreamt that I was sitting, ironically, here's my cousin Misha again, that I was sitting in my cousin Misha's house and I was hanging out and watching my aunts and uncles mill around in her kitchen. Now, this was a highly unusual dream because I'd never been to my cousin Misha's house in California. And Misha and I, we'd like talk on Facebook or whatever, but we really hadn't really talked or seen each other in probably 15 years, not really. And I certainly had never been to her home. So here I was having this random dream about my cousin Misha at that time, who I haven't really seen for 12 or 15 years, in her random kitchen and watching everybody, prepare dinner. And I'm sitting on an ottoman in her living room. And the living room has this great view of the kitchen. And I'm talking with my Auntie Joan, who's Misha's mom, about something that was really bothering me or troubling me. But I didn't understand what I was talking about because she was talking to me about it. And I'm like, oh, this sounds very serious. And all of a sudden, my grandma pops up. And she is literally sitting between me and my Auntie Joan in the dream. And my Auntie Joan keeps talking with me. And like she doesn't see my grandma. And my grandma's just looking at me, and I'm looking at my grandma, and I'm looking at my Auntie Joan. And I realize in that moment, in that dream, you can feel the difference between the spirit life that comes to visit you in a dream and the dream that's just kind of running around you. And I realized, oh my God, so nobody else can see my grandma. So I say to my grandma, even though I haven't seen her for 24 years, she hasn't popped up in a dream, nothing. She's looking right at me, and I am so full of emotion 24 years later that I can barely get out the words, "Can anybody else in here see you?" Meaning my dream. And she looked right at me and she said, "No, only you." And it was just this massive confirmation, and everything else is going on in the dream, and here's my grandma. And she didn't say a whole lot. She took my hand. And she just had this look on her face, and she had this look in her eyes, and her eyes were all teared up, and she grabbed my hand. And the feeling was, I love you so much. Like I can't even begin to tell you, gang, how much she just imparted. I was so loved, right? So this is all going on in this dream. I, of course, in the dream am so choked up that I can barely form words to talk to her. And all I can choke out is, I can barely choke out 24 years later, "I miss you." That's all I can say to my grandma who's sitting there. And she just, it's like, I don't think she actually said, "I miss you too," but that was this energy that was coming through. And it was just the energy of just know how much you're loved. And I am here for you, and you are so loved. So this is like a thing, right? I wake up. And I tell my partner at the time, oh my God, I dreamt about my grandma. And then it hits me, because we're talking about dreams as allegories. This was a literal appearance of my grandmother in this dream. And I'm telling you my dreams, you guys, not to bore you to tears, but to give you an example of how to decode your own dreams. Okay, so just know that. So I wake up and I said, oh my God, my grandma was in this dream, and I stopped telling the dream because I realized what was going on in it. And I just turned to my former partner and I said, holy moly, God, something terrible is going to happen to me, because my grandma wanted me to know how loved I was and how supported I was. And holy God, I have no idea what's going to happen, but it must be pretty bad. Well, I won't get into the bad thing that happened, but a very emotionally traumatic thing happened about, I'd say maybe half a year later. And ironically, when the thing happened, I was on a book tour in Northern California, staying with my cousin Misha, who I had not seen in 12, 15 years. And when the awful thing happened, I was beside myself and devastated. And thank God my Aunt Joan was there. And at one point, my Aunt Joan and I were sitting on an ottoman in the living room that had a beautiful view of the kitchen as the family was getting dinner ready. And my Aunt Joan was telling me all of this advice, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. That was the exact scenario in my dream when my grandma appeared. So I knew in that moment that she had shown up in my dream to prepare me for this really heavy blah thing that I had to go through. And it was phenomenal because in that moment, I could recall how much I was loved. In that moment, I could recall how important it was for, how much support I had. And it was a devastating thing emotionally that was going on. So our dreams will lay out a platform for spirit life to come give us messages, and they will wrap those messages in a particular, shall we say, landscape that will have meaning, so that when you come onto the need to apply that message or that lesson, you're going to recognize the landscape. Like in my case, it was the same flipping kitchen in my dream, the exact freaking kitchen. And I know I'm a psychic and blah, and that shouldn't surprise me, but it always does. Come on. That stuff always surprises me when it happens. It freaks me right out. You never get used to that. And then to have my grandma sitting on the same ottoman, the ottoman color was exactly the same. I mean, it blew me away. How my gram had set up a moment for me to be able to remember how much I was loved during a heavy time of crisis. So our dreams not only are predictive, they are allegorical. And sometimes they're just working out anxieties. If our brain is harboring too much anxiety, did you know that our brain is going to try to work out that anxiety so we don't have to do it during the daytime? That's why we're dreaming about it. I mean, okay. How many times have you had the, oh shoot, I missed my alarm dream, or, oh no, I showed up at work with no clothes on dream, or I showed up to high school. I used to have this one all the time. I showed up to high school late and the halls are empty and I forgot to do my hair, and then you wake up and you have to get ready for school all over again. Those types of anxiety dreams are literally our mind trying to work through the hiccups that we have so that we can be free during the daytime. And, there's not a whole lot of reading spiritually into that, except for that's just psychologically us trying to get our crap in a group, which is great. That works too. So when we look at dreams and the power of them and the metaphors for them, we can also look at our off-world community, because there are a number of people who are contacted by the off-world community during dream cycles. And again, especially the folks, the off-worlders coming from the realm of Oturan, the Oturan from Otur, or Arcturians, as we like to call them, and the folks from Sirius AB love to deal with us through dreams. And what's fascinating about that is a lot of people will report to me what they call sleep paralysis, which is actually, yes, it's a medical thing. Sleep paralysis is a real thing. However, it's oftentimes very, very misconstrued when people are literally being held down by spirit life or ghosts. People will think that's sleep paralysis. And yes, sleep paralysis is real, but it's also possible to have something kind of sitting on your chest, and it also feels heavy and makes it hard for your hands to move. So when people have reported dreaming about off-worlders, especially the Oturan love to communicate with us through our dreams and to run scenarios to teach us about fear. Now, that might sound like they're trying to instill, nightmares, but they're not. They're teaching us that we can overcome fear. And again, I'll use one of my own dreams as an example. So I was having this weird, whacked out dream one night that this massive spaceship had come down and aliens were invading the Earth. And in the scenario, it was just me and the Earth and the aliens. And of course, they were crazy and scary. And these aliens walked up to me like they were going to really whoop up a batch of scary. And out of nowhere, I said, I invoke the law of love. And the alien disappeared. Like a video game, you guys. It was so crazy. Just poof, it disappeared. So then it's like the level went up and it got scarier and crazier, and I'll send you the details. But anyway, I again, as it gets frightening, and here comes this alien right in my face, a really scary looking one, I just said, I invoke the law of love, because I knew that these aliens had, these ETs, these off-worlders, had to adhere to this universal law for whatever reason. So I invoke the law of love, and the alien falls back. Well, then it gets really super scary. It's like each time it's more crazy, and we're talking really super scary alien invasion, and here they come, and they're bearing down. And by now I'm feeling fairly confident. So I say, of course, I invoke the law of love. And the whole dream just completely disappeared. And all of a sudden, standing right in front of me was a being from Otur. And, they kind of have that look like, if you want to call it the Greys, except for the Greys are an offshoot race from the Oturan called the Oarnak. And they're a whole different ball of wax here. Yet the Oturan are a really amazing civilization where humanity received our Taoist teachings. We got our Taoist teachings from the Oturan culture. And that Ring of Fire area, China, Japan, especially China way back in the day, was heavily influenced by Oturan teachers. And you can find 10,000-year-old Chinese, 8,000-year-old Chinese scrolls that have Oturan craft drawn in them that would come and go from the oceans. And they would call these Oturan teachers gods or goddesses that came to teach them just amazing philosophy, basically, is what it boiled down to. So what I think is so fascinating is in this dream that I'm talking about, all of a sudden I go through, I guess, my video game levels of fear. And again, a lot of our off-world relatives, because we are related to a lot of these races, are attempting to teach us about overcoming the consciousness of fear so that we can free ourselves and go into a much more fluid period in humanity. So here is this Oturan being standing right in front of me, and they do sort of kind of look like a gray, yet their heads aren't quite as bobbly, but they do have almond-shaped heads and much smaller almond-shaped eyes. They don't have the great bubble eyes like the X-Files outtakes. So this being is standing there, and it was a male feeling presence. And the Oturan have a slightly different gender breakdown than we do. Yet this was a masculine feeling, a soft masculine feeling being. They don't have any hair. They're kind of a yellow-green color or a bluey-green color, depending on how old they are and whatever. Just like some people have different skin tones, whatever. So do they. And this guy was sort of a greeny yellow color. And he, like a variegated plant, he kind of turns yellowy at the top and is getting more green down his face, and actually very pretty. And the robe he was wearing was white, and it had what we like to call a Nehru collar, a short little collar. And there were markings all the way down the front of the robe that defined his title. And he was basically like a Jedi Knight priest type of being. And so I had passed my test, I guess. And all of a sudden, this being was just standing right in front of me. And it didn't say anything because the Oturan are categorically telepathic communicators. Yet this being communicated with me and basically was like, good on you, sister. Way to go. That was awesome. Good job. You passed. You didn't panic. You didn't go into a fear response. You invoked the law of love. And, if you listen to the last podcast about the vibration of love and the power of love, the law of love is also a protective element. It's a vibrational protective element that is very powerful. So I was feeling very good about myself, and it was scary, you guys. Listen, at the very last tier of this dream, it was getting pretty Old West. It was getting really Star Wars bar. It was not cool. So the fact that I was terrified, but I invoked the law of love anyway, even though I was feeling confident, made me feel good that was the right thing to do. So I went about that whole week invoking the law of love mentally. When I encountered obstacles, I would invoke the law of love, just energetically. And by God, gang, if it didn't just diffuse the situation. And to invoke the law of love, You literally just say, I invoke the law of love in your head, and you don't engage the drama, and you don't engage the fear, and whatever is coming at you, it just dissipates. It's really fascinating actually to watch. So through my dreams, I was instructed by an off-world race through that delta wave pattern where I am receiving. I was instructed how to invoke the law of love and get out of some icky situations, and also draw in the power of that protective element through the quantum field, which is the love vibration or the all provision frequency. It was really fascinating. So as we go through this process with our dreams, the other portion of this, when we're dealing with off-worlders and we're dealing with spirits and anybody who's trying to communicate with us, the other portion is that as we're moving through all of this, we come to a place where we are learning, yet our mind remembers what happens in our dreams, even though if you consciously can't remember them when you wake up. That's why sometimes if you're awakened, like at a nap, you want to remember your dreams, take a nap. Take a nap and set an alarm. Because when you take a nap, you automatically get plummeted into this REM cycle if you really honestly take that nap. And then boom, when the alarm hits, it wakes you up during the REM cycle. So you're kind of pasty, but you're going to remember the dream. Because as the REM cycle dies back, that's when we actually wake up, right? So just a quick recap. While you're in the delta wave pattern, spirits can talk to you, off-worlders can talk to you, your own brain talks to you to make sure that you're working out problems from the day. You can receive information literally, allegorically, telepathically. You can receive information about upcoming events. Like I said, pray for the world because we have a bad tsunami coming in that's going to be awful coming in here soon. If it hasn't already happened, I haven't checked the news yet today. I probably should have, but I didn't. So when we're looking at our dream cycle, we have the opportunity to recognize that we are plugged in to the all-seeing, all-knowing database of life. That's what dreaming is. It's going into that quantum field and just extracting information and allowing also our spirit to roam. Because how many times in dreams have you woken up and you're like, I swear I dreamt about Greece, but I swear I was in Greece. We can have out-of-body experiences when we dream. And those out-of-body experiences are really, really poignant. They are phenomenal. They are healing because not only are we're out of our body, but we still keep a line in the wall. We have to keep a carabiner in the body, okay? We go rappelling out of the body. We're still attached, so you're not out there floating around. And you go down to a cave or wherever you're going, and you are actually there. So you bring the energy of that place back to the body as you've astral traveled. And people can astral travel without actually sleeping. I do this when I do remote viewing. If I am remote viewing for law enforcement, or I've never done it for the military, but I would donate my time to a worthy cause there. When we are remote viewing, we allow our brainwave pattern to slow down, and we allow the spirit to float, and we stay hooked on with our little carabiner to where I always imagine hooking onto my belly button. What a dork, right? But anyway, hook it onto my belly button and I go ahead and float up like a balloon. And you can place yourself through the quantum field anywhere. You should try this. It's fun. And it's hard for us to decide whether what we're seeing when we're actually having that really amazing out-of-body experience, sleeping or non-sleeping, it's hard to decide if that's real or if it's just our, quote, imagination. Now, of course, we do have an imagination. And, I talk a lot on this podcast about the fact that our brain does not know the difference between something we imagine, between something that actually has happened. Our brain does not know the difference between our actual real life 3-dimensional experiences and something we think happened. it just knows that it's a thought pattern. It knows it's a synapse. So when we're astral traveling, the brain is going, wow, I've been to Greece. That's cool. And when you come back and you bring all of that incredible energy with you that you actually had in Greece or wherever you astral traveled, your brain's going to log it as you having been there. So why talk about astral travel? Well, because we do it a lot when we sleep. And again, you can do it when you're awake. So one of the most incredible opportunities I've had in astral travel, sometimes it happens when I'm sleeping. A lot of times for me, it happens in a predictive way. Like last night, I was in the middle of a tsunami getting tossed around. And I actually woke up. You're probably noticing that my nose sounds a little stuffed up today. I actually woke up with water in my lungs. And I ran to not to be gross, but I ran to the bathroom and was actually throwing up water. And it was salty water. So I've got water in my nose today from wherever I was transported to last night. Sure didn't have a cold yesterday, but woke up this morning with all this water in my nose. So when we go somewhere like that, our body, our spirit body, picks up the elements of that place. And again, I mean, I recognize that for some listening, you're going to be like, what? You had some predictive dream? You were tossing around inside and drowning in a tsunami and you woke up with water in your lungs? And yeah, that happens. That happens. Because when we go there on that quantum level, that actually is happening. It just hasn't happened yet, but it's actually happening in the space-time continuum. So it's a really, and we could do a whole podcast on what it means to experience transfiguration. And I mean, that's a cool thing. Not so cool when your nose is stuffed up and you taste like seaweed. That's gross. However, this is why I wanted to do a podcast on dreams today, was because of this crazy predictive dream. When I astral travel in that way, and when you might, a lot of times I go to a place where something is happening. I dreamt about a train wreck years and years and years ago. And I was literally standing. I astral traveled to the place where the two engines were going to run into each other. And my brain matrixed it a little bit because my brain saw the wreck a little bit differently than it actually happened, but it did see the exact creek, and it saw the trees, and it saw the highway, and it saw the Burlington Northern green engine, and at the time the Santa Fe engine that was golden colored melted together, and I felt the impact of it. So the astral traveling will oftentimes take you somewhere either that you've been in a past life or a place that exists now that needs healing. Sometimes you can just astral travel to a cool place that you're going to go. So allowing your brain and your body and your spirit to have a rational conversation when you're dreaming, you'll be able to feel the places that are actually in a different dimension. Have you ever dreamt in different dimensions? When we go places dimensionally, because we can astral travel dimensionally also when we're sleeping, those dimensions can have really, really phenomenal acute color, smells, tastes. I mean, you can fly. I was dreaming also last night that I was flying. That was fun. I'm constantly teaching myself to fly in my dreams. It's an ongoing process. So I know how to fly. If I can just do it waking, I will do a podcast on how to fly, honest to God. So when we astral travel in our dreams, that's a great thing to journal about also, because you may not know you're astral traveling, yet if you're journaling about this really amazing place in Greece or this really incredible meadow in the Alps, and it's so vivid that you remember it for years to come, those dreams that you remember for years to come are generally snapshots of someplace either that you're going to go, or they are a massive lesson that you have not yet come upon. And I'll save you a very involved dream I had years ago that involved music and moving back to Montana and spiritual trials. And that dream stuck with me just verbatim until I had gone through a bunch of spiritual trials and moved back to Montana. And then the dream started to kind of fade out. I mean, I still remember it, but not in the vivid detail that I did. And in 2017, I recorded that album, You've Got to Go Back the Way That You Came. And the last song, which is the title song on that record, is You've Got to Go Back the Way That You Came, because I hung on to a dream that I had, this dream I'm telling you about, for about 20 years. It was so vivid. And the message of the dream was me at the end of the dream saying, you've got to go back the way that you came. You got to go back the way that you came. And that involved me, having to forge a whole new road that didn't even exist and all these other things. Yet that stuck with me so hard that when I happened upon the time frame in my life where that dream, its analogy 20 years earlier, needed to be applied, the lesson of it, the wraparound, you got to go back the way that you came. My God, I was like, God, no wonder this thing's been at the forefront of my consciousness for 20 years. This is the wrap up of a massive lesson, a massive spiritual lesson. So being able to dream journal, if you're not a crazy dream rememberer like I am, is very important, because you can go back to that dream journal and you can say, okay, what was I looking at? What was I dreaming about? And if you dream journal, even if it's not like super detailed, if you wake up, okay, right when you wake up and jot down whatever it is that you can remember. Let's see, I was trying to teach myself to fly and I was only flying a few feet off the floor, but I could go really fast and I could control my speed and height, and it was good. And I was in this building and it was blah, blah, blah. Write as much down as you can, because when you later actually, can learn to fly, actually you do a podcast on that. I want to hear about that. But you might actually be in a building where you are, you're like, oh my God, I actually flew in this building. I recognize this building. It's so unique. It has red walls. It's blah, blah, blah. So we get to see, if we dream journal, we get to see that our consciousness is constantly looking ahead. And dreams aren't always just about crunching what the heck happened in our psyche to make sense out of it, which they will. We'll replay bad events. We'll have nightmares. I mean, our mind churns, okay? Our mind churns stuff. Yet our dreams, for the most part, set us up for massive lessons, huge communication with off-worlders, as well as with our deceased relatives and people who want to bring us messages, and timely messages at that, okay? We are literally, when we sleep, it's so important that we get sleep, because even if you're not remembering your dreams, you are receiving messages from the universe. It's kind of like when you plug in your iPhone at night because it needs to be charged for the next day. You are literally plugging in to the quantum field. You are plugging in to universal consciousness. And universal consciousness is like, hey, cool, hi, good to see you. We have all kinds of things for you. Perhaps it's predictive. Perhaps you're getting a message that you need to carry for the next 20 years. Perhaps you're just dreaming about, it's funny, sex. When you dream about sex, that can actually be physical, like your body is going through some physiological thing in the middle of the night, and you're just dreaming about, you're following your body. Or a lot of times, sex isn't even about sex. It represents power over another person or power over a situation, and it comes out in that physical act, which is really interesting. So, I mean, whatever it is that you're dreaming about is really an intense experience to be able to receive messages. So again, I really encourage everybody to keep a dream journal. Doesn't have to be fancy or long. You don't have to be Hemingway. Just jot it down real quick and keep track of it. Especially those of you walking around with the clairvoyant gifts. Because 9 times out of 10, you're receiving dreams and information about events that are yet to come. And those events that are yet to come, oftentimes we will get a preview, like this thing with this tsunami that's coming. And again, I get the feeling it's in a tropical region. This tsunami coming in, I experienced all this terror and all the horror, and I mean, just I won't even get into it because it was just god awful watching people fly by you in the water, and it's blah, icky. However, the logical reason that would happen is that is going to occur. And that's going to put a lot of trauma into the ethers. And that's going to put a lot of fear into the ethers. So me experiencing that, quote, before it happens, obviously it's happening somewhere. We just haven't gotten there in the timeline yet. With this mass death and these thousands of people that are killed by this tsunami coming in, that feeling is shared by me. So I'm telling it to you, and we're all going, ooh, oh, that's horrible. That's tragic. Those poor people. We are spreading out the emotionality and the horror that happened in that particular moment. So for all of us, okay, what I think is fascinating here is that we are sharing the horrors, we are sharing the pain, we are sharing the difficulties when we have predictive dreams about awful disasters. Because I couldn't tell you exactly where this was going to happen. It just feels in the southern hemisphere or tropical or something. Yet I will tell you it is going to happen. Because like I said, I woke up coughing up salt water. It was not cool. So when this happens though, I wish I could stop it. I can't stop it. The only thing I can do was pre-absorb some of the energy of the trauma. And I'm sure I'm probably not the only person who's a clairvoyant, clairsentient having dreams about that particular instance, would be my guess. So what I would tell you is that no matter what's going on in your map, in your dream map, you are in constant communication with the universe. And this is so important for all of us to understand that when we are in this communication with the universe, we are sharing information, we're sharing traumas, and more than anything, we are getting our oil changed, people. That's what dreams do. They put us up on blocks, they rinse out our psyche, they rinse out our emotional scape, and they allow us to go forward clear and clean and charged up for the next day. So pay attention to your dreams, even the ones that are really scary. I did have some dreams with some OffWorlders where they put me through another fear course to see how I'd handle it, and I was doing fine until they involved my family. And then all of a sudden, I could not just invoke the law of love because it wasn't just me. I was worried about protecting my wife and my daughter. And I literally failed the test. And within the dream, woke up into another dream of just this being standing in front of me from Oturan, just looking at me like, yeah, sister, you kind of bit it on that one. You kind of went all monkey and grabbed a rock and beat everybody's head in there. That's not exactly what we were going for. But what it showed me was that my vulnerable point was I had a fear point that was tribal. It was primal around my family. So, that's something for me to put into perspective. Not that I shouldn't love them that much, yet it was fascinating. So they're your teachers. They're your clean it outers. Your dreams are your friends, gang. Your homework for this week is to start a dream journal, write it all down, see what the universe is attempting to tell you, see what pieces of upcoming tragedies or upcoming celebrations that you encounter in the quantum field, see which pieces of these things are being passed to you so that we can distribute that either great grand celebration or great grand horror through the ethers before it happens, so it doesn't just impact energetically one place. It's very crippling. And remember that we are completely connected. We're connected, gang. Go learn to fly. And I will see you next week.